Welcome everyone. My name's Josh. I'm the lead pastor. Sorry, I'm the editor of theleadpastor.com. So I'm pumped to be sitting with Jake Campbell, from Sunday Best, which is a web agency that specifically serves churches.
Yeah, happy to be here and happy to share, just insights that I've gathered over the last decade. Our passion really is to serve local churches, and
Mhm.
like you said, that has come from serving in my own local church. That's where it
Yeah.
all kind of came from. So, my little bit of my background is I spent the last decade or so on staff at my church called Reach Church. We're based just out of Seattle, Washington, and during that time, I went from, really it started as a church plant. So at first I started out doing everything, right? Like
Yeah.
serving kids, doing tear down, putting signs up on the sidewalks,
Yeah. Kind of
just
grunt work
anything.
type stuff.
Yeah, just
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. And part of that is just a church plant, right? Is there's a lot to do and not enough people. And
Yeah.
I really got an introduction of almost everything, every aspect of the church, right? I was
Yeah.
serving kids, I was running slides on Sunday, um, designing sermon series, it's all sorts of stuff, and served in youth group, all that kind of stuff. And that eventually led to being a staff member where I
Mm.
oversaw the creative team and oversaw our various creative efforts, including websites, photography, video, social media, all that kind of communication
Yeah.
aspects. That was the last decade of my life, just learning and really just trial through fire of
Yeah.
doing everything, learning from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And eventually it came to a spot where I felt like we were equipped enough to help other churches.
Yeah.
And it kind of came naturally where we started getting other churches asking for our help. And so it's kind of where my background is. And now
Great.
I own Sunday Best, and we're serving churches all over the country.
Yeah. So sundaybest.io, that's your site. So I'll say right off the top, I've had a chance to kind of get to know Jake a bit. I think he could do a really, really good job for you and your church, and even just providing some direction or some suggestions to think through. Um, so my hope for this conversation, Jake, is that pastors or church leaders who are listening to this are really kind of equipped with some good knowledge, some good practical insights for them to look at their own church website, maybe with more educated eyes, better, clearer eyes, um, as well, to kind of help them understand what kind of goes into the process, or a good, healthy process for developing a church. So maybe we can start with is like the first question: what actually makes one church website better than another? Like, what makes a good church website?
Yeah, totally. I think first you have to start with why does it matter? What are the
Mm,
stakes at hand? I think that will inform why we should actually create good church websites. And from what I've found is the church website is the true front door to a church.
mm,
Before visitors are showing up on a Sunday, they are on your website trying to figure
yeah,
out who you are and if they can have a place in your church.
mm,
And when I was a kid, we used to when you wanted to hang out with a friend, what'd you do? You like ran outside and knocked on your friend's door and see
yeah,
if they're home, right?
yeah,
Kids don't do that anymore, right? They're gonna text their friend first.
yeah,
They're gonna see if they're home, and then they go outside and play, and just like
yeah,
we've done for generations. Um, that's the equivalent for the church website. Is people don't just show up on a Sunday morning. They
mhm,
first check it out, see if they align with you, if they feel like they're welcomed, all the information they might need or be concerned about. So those are like the stakes at play. We believe
yeah,
that a good church website brings people to church on Sunday. It's not
yeah,
about just looking good or like having something that looks fancy.
yeah,
We truly believe that it leads to people getting to know Jesus.
yeah,
So back to the original question, what makes a good website? To me, it's the difference of one having it's a clear goal. We believe that, like I was just talking about. we think the best use case for a church website is bringing people to church on Sunday. So
Mm,
to me, that's the number one question. Is it good or not? Is it bringing people to church, or
yeah,
is it not?
yeah,
And to me, like, how you would determine that is that can be anywhere from, the design, is it appealing to look at? I think the stat is, like, you have, like, a couple seconds to, like, really connect with someone once
yeah,
you load on their website.
yeah,
If they, within a few seconds, aren't, yeah, happy with what they're seeing, they go back to Google.
yeah.
So there's the design side. There's copy. That's a huge one.
So maybe for folks who have like very little background in actual web development or web design, when you
Yeah.
say copy, what does that mean?
Copy as in copywriting, just the words on the
Mm,
page.
gotcha.
So again, if we're filtering through, does this bring primarily a visitor to church on Sunday? Everything is through that lens. What does the audience see and read and listen to? So is it connecting with them or not? So
Yeah,
copy would be, are you using language that would speak to a visitor? Are you answering questions that they might have? Are you making them feel welcomed?
hmm,
Or are you using a lot of insider language? That's a huge one for me is, especially for pastors who've been pastors for a long time, it's
yeah,
hard for them to remember what it's like to be a visitor at a
yeah,
church. Or even they might not be a Christian, or maybe they're a skeptic, or maybe they're very new to their faith. So if you're using language that is very insider, it's just going to go right over their head.
yeah,
They're not going to connect with it, and they're going to be
yeah,
confused.
yeah,
And when someone's confused, they do not want to like check out their church. They're going to go
yeah,
somewhere else where they do feel more comfortable.
yeah.
So words are a huge aspect that shouldn't be overlooked. And uh, the other, on that same kind of aspect of what makes a good church website, is there a clear path for the people on your website?
Mm,
A church might have a lot going on. There might be different ministries, different initiatives, events, sermons, all sorts of stuff happening. And churches tend to struggle with having knowing where to put all of that in a way that's
mm.
helpful and useful.
The
And
organization of the content?
yeah, the
Yeah,
organization. And what churches tend to do, because they don't know how to organize it, they just put everything out
yeah,
all at once, and you're on their website and you're seeing everything, and you don't know what to do. You're
yeah,
getting like bombarded with
yeah,
all the pages. And that is something that we guide churches through, of starting to pick and choose what is most important and what
yeah,
is maybe still important, but maybe isn't the first thing you introduce
yeah,
to someone.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so those are some key components. There's many other things that make a good church
Sure.
website, but bottom line is it helping people show up on Sunday, or is
Yeah,
it kind of getting in the way of that? And that's to me the biggest kind of indicator or metric you should be measuring. And I think how you can actually measure that is, um, talk to people who are new to your church, ask them about your website,
yeah, yeah,
ask them if it's helpful, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Or if you're getting 0 stories of people who are, like, referencing your website, it might be a situation where you're
yeah,
not actually bringing
yeah.
visitors through your website.
So, a follow-up question to that. So, I mean, in my own career, I've worked closely with like tons of pastors and tons of different churches. And I think that there are some pastors that maybe have different priorities for their websites. So, for example, I had one pastor tell me one time, he's like, "Oh, we view the church website as kind of like a glorified business card, where it's like, okay, this someone's going to get the basic information about you, but it's like a very shallow site, like not very much on there." I've also heard pastors talk about how, oh, we just want our site primarily to be for our own members. So that's where you can go and see the latest sermon. You can go there to sign up or register for these upcoming events, etc. But as far as looking at the site through the lens of a first timer, it can be harder. So maybe if like, do you have like an encouragement or some sort of a thought specifically for pastors, maybe whose site doesn't isn't currently geared towards what you're describing. Um, and maybe how can you like help them kind of like make the jump to committing to that new direction, especially if they don't have like the confidence or the experience, like, oh yeah, no, this really does work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it can be hard because you might feel like you are sacrificing your current
Mm,
community, right? It's
yeah,
like, well, if I focus on my visitors, what about my current, church
yeah,
community? And that can be a tension point. Now I would say, um, and this is based off my personal experience, and I think a lot of people I just know is when you are plugged in a church and you're a regular attender, you don't really go on the website unless you're like signing up for an event or
yeah,
maybe wanting to check out a sermon. And it's usually those two things. You're not like
mhm,
browsing the site for
yeah,
information that you probably already know. So to me, that's the encouragement of recognize that your church members, if they have a place at your church, they've kind of gone beyond your website. You're showing up on Sunday morning. They're plugged in,
yeah,
and unless they're signing up for something, um, so hopefully that's clarity of why the visitor
yeah,
is should be the focus point,
yeah,
and how to take those first few steps to me is you have to force yourself to put on a hat and just start asking questions.
yeah,
So every sentence that you read on your site is like, if I knew nothing about my church, would that make sense?
yeah,
You have to say that about the navigation for your site. You have to
mhm,
say that about yeah, the language you're using, what pages exist, even like the buttons and the text
yeah,
on the buttons. Have to try so hard to try to like think if you knew nothing about your church
yeah,
and would it make sense?
yeah,
And I think that can get you pretty far. And I think after that, really go find someone that maybe doesn't know your church and
mm,
just say you watch them, like go on the website for 5 minutes, take them out for coffee, and just like give them like, hey, I want you to sign up for a serve team and just, like, give them the website, see if they know where to go and,
yeah,
like, can access that. So
yeah,
that's a great way is just, like, put it in the hands of someone who is in that position already.
yeah,
You can also, if there's, again, someone who is new to your church and you feel comfortable, like, ask them about your church website and
mhm,
just say, like, "Was there anything that was annoying or confusing or
yeah,
you couldn't figure it out or you wanted to find but you couldn't?" All that kinda stuff.
yeah,
So just crowdsource the people around you,
mhm,
I think is just a great resource of getting there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, awesome. So that sort of touches on sort of the question I was gonna kind of go to next, which essentially is talk about what you believe is a good, like, wise process that pastors or churches should go through as they're actually upgrading their website. Um, Part of my thinking behind that question, well, I guess what I want the pastor to get out of that question is if they're going to go and hire another agency or hire somebody to help them, what's the process they should kind of be expecting to go through? Um, and maybe any misconceptions. That's like a part two of the question. We can touch on that
Yeah.
after, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Totally. Yeah, I think it starts with, believing your church website is an extension of your church.
Mm,
Um, so that's anywhere from values to, demographic you're hoping to reach,
yeah.
the location, all that kind of stuff. It should be an
Mhm,
extension, your personality.
yeah.
And I think it starts with really knowing what those things are. So if you're hiring an agency and you don't know who you want to be, what's your like
Yeah.
the type of people you want to reach, the type of
Yeah.
tone you talk with and your values,
Mhm,
um, it's going to be a lot of just muddy water because the
yeah.
agency can't really figure that out for you.
Yeah.
They might be able to ask some guiding questions. So it's super helpful just to know who do you want to be as a church? Who do you want to reach?
Yeah.
What are you all about?
Yeah.
And if you, for example, if a core tenet of your church maybe is outreach and missions, that should reflect on your website. That
Mhm,
should be on a higher priority for your particular website versus maybe a different church that maybe
yeah.
has a different tenet that they value more.
Yeah.
So it really should reflect those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's things like that, as well as asking questions of, how does a visitor get plugged into my church? Do you
Mm,
have a visitors kind of event? Is it a meet with a pastor kind of coffee
yeah,
setup? Like, what are those action steps you'd want visitors to take, and have a clear plan for that.
yeah,
So that way, when you start your website project, you should implement those things on
yeah.
your website.
Gotcha. Nice. So, as far as the practicality, okay, I've actually stepped in the door. I've had some conversations with the web developer or maybe someone in the house. We kind of know some of our priorities. Talk about maybe some of the technical steps that are part of the website development. And then, yeah,
Yeah, no, happy to. So when we work with our clients, we start at a very high level. So before any design is touched or copy is written, all that kind of stuff, we start very high at just what are the pages that should exist,
yeah,
and then how should we organize them.
yeah,
So you would call that a site map in the website world, and it's the map for how do you find every page that exists on your website.
nice.
And you can do that on a whiteboard or lots of digital whiteboard apps out there that can help you with that.
Yep.
So you're just starting there. And again, all those kind of that map should reflect your values, right? So you're determining what things lay in certain priority and where can everyone find those things.
Yeah.
And then you just continue going down to more detail. So after you sort out the site map, you should figure out what should exist on every page on the site.
Mm,
So you're determining what content, what sections, all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. And you're just slowly going down and down. So after you have a clear strategy, so you know what pages exist, where can you find them, and what's on the pages. That's when you get probably more into the fun stuff of like what does the website look like? What's the
Yeah. Look
design?
and feel. That's always the fun part
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, so I think that's where a lot of people struggle is they wanna start with look and feel,
Yeah.
and it truly is important, it's not like an extra thing, but your look and feel should, like, amplify your strategy and not
Yeah.
just, like, be in place of a strategy.
Yeah.
So that's when you get into look and feel and start writing copy and placing
Yeah.
images and all that kinda stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, start high level and just slowly get more and more into the weeds of
Yeah.
specifics.
Yeah. Um, what I would like if we can actually drill down even further, um, I've seen some websites that I think they definitely line up with what you've been describing as like a great church website. And a lot of them have member portals, where it's like, okay, here's a way that you can go and access whatever management system the church is using. Thinking back through some of your experiences, what's maybe some of the software that churches could potentially be working with in the past, whether that's like software for their online donation pages or software that, if like our church, for example, you go online and like, okay, so we're using Planning Center for our, for scheduling. You can do a lot of that through the website. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the software that you're familiar with or aware of. And maybe just if you want to make general comments on it, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your website really is a hub for a lot of different pieces with your church.
Yeah.
That includes different pieces of software. So you have the hub, but you have all these things that are plugging into it.
Yeah.
So that could be a sermon like media management. So there's you can that could be just straight up YouTube
Yeah.
embeds on your site. That could be something like Subsplash that offers embeds in
Yeah.
a really great way to connect with your church app. And there's other kind of media components. Then you have event registration. That's a huge one for churches. So you have planning center. That's probably I don't know by stats, but it seems to be one of the biggest
Yeah.
players
Yeah.
that I come across. But also, again, Subsplash offers that. You have Rock is another
Mhm.
leading kind of
That's
platform for
that
that.
ROK. Trying to
ROCK. Yeah,
Okay, right. I was trying to there's, like, some cool internet spelling
yeah,
of the word, and I just, like,
yeah,
straight
totally.
up
So there's a few like leading kind of platforms, and again,
Mm,
there are even the Rock, for example, has like that member portal where it's kind of more of a gated
yeah,
access, and you need to sign up,
yeah,
and then again, you have giving.
yeah,
Obviously, that is vital for a church. So you
huge part
have
of it, yeah,
again Subsplash, PushPay, Overflow, um, and each one of these have, like I was kinda alluding to, some of them offer a, like, all-in-one kind
Mhm.
of, component where,
Yeah.
they do offer a platform to host your website, and they also have an event registrations
Yeah.
and giving,
Yeah.
and they're all, aiming to make it as easy as possible so you can use one provider and then you
Yeah.
kinda get the full suite,
Yeah.
and it's kinda up to your church on your needs,
Mhm.
whether that's the right route or if you should more, like, customize the correct, like, stack for your
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
and that just depends on your specific needs.
Mhm.
For example, some of the, um, church, kind of the website platforms some of these organizations offer might be more limited versus
Mhm.
creating a custom kinda
Yeah.
site for your church,
Yeah.
but maybe you don't need a custom site, so you're
Yeah.
totally happy with those
Yeah.
limitations.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, again, the website is kind of the hub, and you have all these things plugging into it.
Yeah.
It's those that's a very important part of your church because it's really hard to switch those platforms.
Mhm.
Once you start getting into a certain giving platform, it's really hard to switch over to a different one, or same
Yeah.
for events or
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
So choose wisely, take your time, and make
Yeah.
sure you kind of go through the pros and cons and get a full picture
Yeah.
before you kind of invest in that like ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, the lead pastor, one of the ways, like one of the really important parts of our site is like we call our inventory content, where it's okay. We actually go through and look at what are the top ranked website builders that are available for churches today. What are the top ranked, church management systems or church accounting software, and we actually go and like look at every single one individually. We compare them, we rank them. So that's been a really big part. I mean, I feel like it's kind of the lifeblood of the lead pastor. And so for anybody listening, if you need some direction or place to start, like there's a lot of good stuff on the lead pastor as well. And um, so let me know, like, if you can answer this question, that'd be awesome. If not, we can always cut it. The question I have is like, have you seen any um changes or benefits that maybe churches would experience after beginning to use something like an online giving portal through their church? So maybe they didn't have one and they started to use it. Like, have you seen that? Have you heard churches talk about that kind of thing at all? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the advantages of digital platforms like that is there's a lot of just simplicity involved with you can set up a reoccurring giving, for
yeah,
example, and you don't have to take some of the guesswork of what giving will we expect next month.
yeah,
It also simplifies some of the accounting. You don't need someone
yeah,
to go to the bank to deposit a check.
yeah,
So there's lots of advantages and, trends that way where,
yeah.
again, you have a church that has doing so much ministry work, but there's so much just people management and, like,
Mhm.
accounting and information that you're trying to
Oh, yeah.
organize. So you have these tools that, can help you simplify that
Yeah.
versus, back in the day when maybe you need an in-house accountant to help with some of
Yeah.
these things, or you have someone who's depositing all these checks or trying to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest trend. I think again too the other component I wouldn't want to forget is just ease of use.
Mhm.
Anytime there's friction, and this goes back to even a church website, is when people face friction, we're like allergic to friction.
Yeah.
We want the easiest path in life for whatever we're trying to do. We want the
Yeah.
easiest thing, and it's really hard for us to choose the hard thing.
Yeah.
So when we meet friction, when it's like, maybe I love this church and I want to like support them. If there's a button online that allows me to give in like
Yeah.
10 seconds, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
If it forces me to write a check, I might not do it, even if I love the church, because I don't know where
Yeah.
my check is. It causes
Yeah.
friction.
Yeah.
So that's even with just your website at large is
Yeah.
trying to remove that friction and seeing what are the things that might prevent someone from
Mhm.
getting connected with your church. That could
Yeah.
be, yeah, your website. A lot of that could be clarifying, sorry, clarifying components of the Sunday experience.
Yep.
So for example, an FAQ section, maybe you're able to, like, answer it may sound silly to some people, like, "What should I wear on
Yeah,
Sunday?" Right?
totally. Yep.
Some people might not have any idea what they should wear, and that might be a friction point.
Yeah.
So in a FAQ section, you can answer even the simplest of questions that removes that friction,
Yeah.
and it makes it easy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but, yeah,
No,
definitely
it does.
it
I
helps.
think that you absolutely touched on, I think, what I believe are, like, really important points. And I mean, in my own experience, I mean, I'm a pastor, and I've also worked on tons and tons of websites, and my full-time job is running the leadpastor.com. And so I kind of like straddle the two worlds in a way. And so in the conversations with pastors who are just used to face-to-face ministry, for them, their week revolves around Sunday. And the really powerful moments where the Holy Spirit really moves are often in one-on-ones or leading a small group. And in-person interactions are so much more forgiving than an online interaction. Like, if I'm talking to somebody and, like, oh, they've got, like, a piece of food in their teeth, that'll distract me for a bit. And depending on how bad my ADHD is that day, it might, like, knock me out of the conversation. But it's like, okay, there's so many other, I don't know, it's weird to put in this phraseology, but there's so many other data points and, like, points of connection that are happening between me and this other person
Yep.
that keep me engaged. Whereas a website is far more limited that way, in that
Mhm.
if there's, like you said, that point of friction, if there's one little thing that's like, oh, this didn't take me where I thought it was going to go, or this link is broken, it's like, it's really, really easy just to leave the site altogether.
Yep.
I mean, I think about, there's a ministry I was thinking about. uh I was gonna donate, and I went and it was like, "Oh, like, send us a PayPal to this email address." And I was like, "I'm gone." Like, and the thing is, it wasn't even a conscious decision. And, what I believe and observed, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that one of the huge challenges with developing a website is changing how you're thinking about people's interactions, because there's so many subconscious things that govern how people interact with the website,
Mhm.
and it's not necessarily intuitive for a pastor. I
Yep.
don't know. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense? Like, what's your assessment?
Totally. Yeah. No, I think I completely agree where I think we all tend to be a little, like, moody and quick to judge behind a screen, right? It's like
Hey, speak for
we
yourself, guys.
Yeah, it's like we scroll on a website and you don't see anybody, so
Yeah,
we tend to, like, are a little quicker to judge where, like you're saying, if you're sitting across a person, you see, like, the real person and the
yeah,
nuance and,
yeah,
there's just that personal connection.
yeah,
So there's definitely I think one, again, getting back to the stakes of, like, it's important to
yeah.
great first impressions.
Mhm.
So I think that's important. And I think you have to be okay with not necessarily connecting with everyone.
Yeah,
I think again it goes back to like just knowing your church. What do you value? What are you
yeah,
all about? And
yeah.
I think it's okay if someone goes on your site and maybe they don't connect with your church because
Mhm.
you were pushing towards a different direction.
Yeah,
Hopefully that person finds another church they do
yeah,
connect with.
yeah.
But recognize your church. In my opinion, each church has a specific calling to a certain
Yeah.
people, and that doesn't mean they're connected with everyone.
Mhm.
So I think by making those choices, you might turn off some people, but I
Yeah,
think you'll even turn more people into visitors and members of
yeah,
the church
yeah.
when you're kind of bold, like this is who we are, this is what we're all
Mhm.
about. Um, yeah, so I think I definitely agree. I think the stakes are there. We tend to make quicker judgments when we're
Yeah,
not talking to people face to face, and it's hard to introduce nuance on like text on a website or design,
yeah,
and I think that kind of leads to some of those kind of decisions where um, yeah, you don't have all those social cues that inform what's happening
yeah,
but on a website, yeah, feels a little more black and white.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, so maybe, like, the last question that's kind of been rattling around in my brain is, what are some misconceptions that you have found are fairly common in the churches that you've interacted with when it comes to planning a new site, developing a new site? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest one, and I've talked about it a lot already, is who is your website for?
yeah,
I think the biggest misconception is you think your church website is for your church,
yeah,
and it's maybe it's not. It primarily is not. It is a little bit. I'm not going to say it's no way for your church, but I think it's
yeah,
primary for people outside your church.
yeah,
So that's the biggest misconception. And I think that will just change everything. If you truly
yeah,
believe that and put that lens on when you're
yeah,
like looking at your site, it will affect how you word things, what pages exist, where you place
yeah,
them, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. So to me, that's the biggest misconception. And maybe not misconception, but I think the biggest thing churches get wrong is they don't guide people on their website.
mm,
They have a website, there's lots of stuff going on, but you're not really directing people towards something.
yeah,
And that's what studies show. It's just what we've experienced in real life. If we're not kind of told what we should be doing, we're not going to ever like take that next action
mm,
step. We Yeah, everywhere in life when you go to like a fast food restaurant, right? It's like they ask you what they're hoping you will do. Like, do you want fries with that? That gives you
yeah,
like they're kind of pushing you and guiding you towards that thing, right?
yeah,
And that's what we would call a call to action.
mhm,
So that's the biggest thing that churches get wrong is there's no call to action. You go on their website, there's stuff going happening, but you're not really like directing them towards anything.
yeah,
So I'd say the biggest thing you could do is create a visit page on your church website. That should be the number one call to action. That should be plastered on the top right on your website, everywhere throughout. It's you're asking people to visit.
yeah,
Um, we really believe that your website leads to your ministry efforts on
yeah,
Sunday,
yeah,
and they're deeply connected. It's not
yeah,
trying to replace those things. So if you direct people towards those things, I think you'll see more people to actually do it,
yeah,
versus just crossing your fingers. Hopefully, people know what to do.
yeah,
Um, so that's I would say the 2 biggest things that come to mind. There's so many others.
yeah,
I think, um, I guess one last one would be, churches tend to they think they need to show everything on their
mm,
website. It's equivalent the best analogy I've seen is, think of it as like a kitchen, and, when you go to a kitchen, if it's, like, fairly organized, you have some things on the countertops, you have some things hidden away in drawers and
yeah,
cabinets, and the things you use the most usually are out on the counter, and the things
yeah,
that you still value, but maybe you use less often, they're kinda tucked away. But
yeah,
imagine if that kitchen was like everything was on the countertops, just everything, because like, technically, you do use it,
yeah,
and it is important.
yeah,
That's kinda what people do with their church websites is, like, they're afraid to, like, devalue a certain ministry, because it is important,
yeah,
um, but by doing that, it kinda, like, hides everything because there's
yeah,
no kinda, like, proper hierarchy.
yeah,
Um so that's what I think most churches get wrong is they're afraid to hide certain things. And I
mhm,
think hiding doesn't mean you don't care about it or it's not important. But maybe it means it is a smaller ministry or maybe it serves less people. So I
yeah,
think it should be a little devalued compared to the thing that impacts the most people.
yeah,
Um, and some of those things are nuanced for every church. And I think that goes back to just knowing what your church is about.
yeah,
But yeah, that's a big one is just you think everything should be on the countertop and you think that's super helpful. It's so helpful to have everything available and really
yeah,
it's just confusing and overwhelming.
yeah. Man, that is actually such a great analogy. I think the best analogies are something like they're built on a previous just innate understanding of how something should be, and it kind of taking that and applying it to a brand new scenario. And so I think that analogy is like does that so so well. Um, man, great wisdom and insight there, Jake. Really appreciate it. So how can people find you? So give me your website, the social handles if you got them, email. Well, if you want to
Totally.
give me email address, you can.
Yeah, no, happy to connect with churches, and again, we just really care about this stuff, and we
Yeah,
really think it's important.
yeah,
And yeah, we serve churches all over the country. If you want to check us out, it's sundaybest.io. You can check us out. You can book a call if you want to connect.
Yeah. Is that a free call,
And
first call?
yeah, totally free. You can email me if you want, jake@sundaybest.io. I'm happy to answer questions. That's probably the best two spots you can connect
Cool.
with me. And again, we just care about this stuff and want churches to succeed in this area. So
Yeah.
happy to connect.
Awesome.